Greetings and salutations, travelers. Welcome back to the Inn of Planar Crossroads. And as always, welcome back to our Around the Hearth discussions. This time, we will be discussing Dreamscapes and Mind Palaces. So, we hope you've buckled up, because we're psychonauting directly into our brains tonight. So, alright, before we do that, before we do any deep mental dives, let's go ahead and do announcements, and then our spotlight. So, I will do my announcement first to give you guys time to think about what you want to do. We will go Skrat, Dan, and then JP, and see how we go from there. So, I am Adam L. Spain with the Inn of Planar Crossroads. We hope that you come to travel the multiverse with us. If you would like to support that traveling of said multiverse, you can do so by supporting us on Patreon, Subscribestar, Locals, or through direct contact. You can figure out how to do that on any of the buttons on our website, innofplanarcrossroads.com or TheIoPC.com. Either one of those URLs work. So, you want to help us reach that $100 a month support level? That's how you do it. I think we should have started our art stream, so why don't you let me know in the comments how those are going under house specials, because we'll be creating a whole bunch of different type of projects under that. It is the umbrella under which, the playlist umbrella under which we live create things with you guys. So, well, I live create things, and sometimes it's with you guys, and sometimes y'all are just asking me questions and stuff. So, it is, will monitor the chat when that happens. So, that's what I've got. What you got?
Oh, that's me. Skrat from a Squirrel Plays over on YouTube. I like to talk about world building, character creation, a little bit of storytelling. And that's whether it's TTRPGs, video games, movies, or even that next bestseller you're working on. And hopefully by this point, when this comes out, I will have dipped my little squirrely toes a little bit more into reviewing some smaller scale tabletops, ones that are lesser known or even new. And yeah, that's about it. That's all I got.
All right.
I love it. Well, that leaves it to me. I'm Dan from Avenue Studios. You can find us on YouTube, Rumble, and anywhere you listen to your podcast. And of course, during these themed collaborations with the Inn of Planar Crossroads, we'll be doing a Force Forge where we build a one-shot in Foundry Virtual Tabletop, and then later in the month we play test it live with some of our supporters, and we build it based on the discussions we have here. Of course, this one being in Augustine Allusions. Ooh, the great Adam from the Inn of Planar Crossroads will be running that game, so I'm very much looking forward to that. And we live stream Wednesdays, 6 p.m. Eastern now. The Force Forge and the live play of Augustine Allusions will be on a different date, TBD, because can't quite travel through time yet. So,
well, I mean, we're always traveling through time.
That's true. I just can't steer.
Not a bad way to put it.
There. So anyways, that's us.
Much more like rules than actual guidelines.
Well done.
And I'm JP, Great Moustache with Seventh Sphere, Open Legend RPG, and I like to make Dan crack up, so yo.
Well, oh. That matched the unicorns, too.
There was a fifth one hiding. See,
we've already reaction that makes me laugh hard.
We've already got the comment for this one. The fifth one was hiding.
The fifth one was hiding. That's good. Ooh.
There you go.
Legend of the Fifth Mic.
Ooh, that one. Yeah, Legend of the Fifth Mic. There we go.
If you just randomly throw that line in somewhere where it makes no sense, I guess you could say you're surreal. Say it like, yeah, the fifth one was hiding.
All right.
Anyways.
Okie dokie. So, that means we are done with our announcements. Now let's get into our shout out. We have been shouting out this month Dragnacarta. Got that silver dragon logo. I do approve. Resources and tools for dungeon masters. They've been talking about, they've been doing it for a couple months now regularly. So that's why we're shouting them out. They got 934 subscribers right now. Do go over and tell them that we sent you and that we can try and get them up to 1,000. That would be cool.
That would be awesome.
There you go. All right. So that's our shout out. We're trying to get on with this one because we've got 2 stories at least that are going to be set up already and all of that. So go ahead and come in around the hearth with us. Grab your preferred beverage and join us as we discuss Dreamscapes and Mind Palaces. So, all right. So I'm going to throw out some media, and then since we already know 2 of you guys have stories, we are going to go, let me see, we'll do JP has something to show off, and then Skrat will let him do his story, and that'll help us give a established thing flow. So as far as inspiration points for different Augustine allusions specifically centered around dreamscapes and mind palaces, you can have something like Inception is a very good example of a mind palace type of thing happening because it's literally diving into people's dreams to incept ideas. The Cell from 2000 with, I think, Jennifer Lopez. Yeah, I think it was J-Lo. Anyway, The Cell. It's really good. They dive into the mind of a murderer to try and find out where his last victim is. Because he's comatose. It's pretty neat.
It is J-Lo.
Oh, that's right.
Well done.
Through the Looking Glass. I shouted that out last time because of how to do it well when you do a dreamscape. And then, for those of you that like Batman the Animated Series, there is a specific episode for Chance to Dream with the Mad Hatter as the main villain.
Yep.
That's a really good one.
I remember that one.
Imagine if Batman didn't have to be Batman. There you go.
Nice.
And then the final specific thing is H.P. Lovecraft's Dreamland Saga. It's a series of short stories. I think Randolph Carter is the main dude, if I remember. It revolves around the Silver Key and how the Silver Key is important in that. So that's one of the different things you can look for to it. But it's several stories in it. And it's one of the ones, I think it's one of his later ones that he did. And you see a progression of not only Carter, but the writer himself in Carter. So it's pretty neat. The Dreamlands are more concrete than some people's traditional idea of Dreamlands, but they're still there. So it's still dreamy, kind of surrealish, and it is one of his more surreal experiments in writing. So that's what I have as far as that. Except there's one that I'm surprised Dan and nobody else has mentioned up to this point, but I made sure to remember. Over the Garden Wall.
Yes.
That's
my word.
Very good. Worth watching every year. That's what I say.
I agree.
All right. So those are some media inspirations.
Dreamscapey. Yeah.
Yeah, because the Dreamscapes and Mind Palaces also fall into that liminal space, those odd places. that offer up surrealness, and then the purgatory or in between moments of life and death also can fall into that. Mm-hmm. All right. So before we dive into more discussion on these points, let's go ahead and have JP do his thing and Skrat do his thing.
So I did actually run this as a one-shot too, but it's actually a one-shot that exists with Open Legend. So I was going to point out aspects of it that can be used. So I don't know if you want me to go first with that or...
Yeah, I can pull it up here and show it off while you're doing that.
Sure. So this is called the Endless Dream. It's set in the Amores Dawn setting. So it's one of the add-ons from Kickstarter. And so the concept is the players have been drawn into this dream. And what's interesting about it is the way that it starts is the players can either roll a d6 to determine the last dream they had, or they can pick one. So it's got an interesting mechanic that ends up tying in throughout the module. So like the options are, there's disfigurement, from teeth falling from your mouth to missing limbs. And what happens is the effect of having that dream, each dream gives you an effect in the game while you're playing it. So if you have a disfigurement, your total hit points are reduced by 1 and you gain 1 resolve, but the dreamer is missing a part of their body. It could be a finger, it could be an entire arm, whatever they lost, it happened in their last dream. Right? Then you've got the falling. Everybody has that dream where you're falling, right? Mm-hmm. So that's one of them. And so the effect is 1 time only, the dreamer may invoke the flight boon with automatic success. It lasts 1 round, and the dreamer's feet hover 3 inches above the ground at all times. Then there's the fleeing dream, where you're always trying to run away from somebody, right? Somebody's chasing you. So with that one, you get advantage 1 on initiative rolls. You get disadvantage on will rolls. And the dreamer can't shake the feeling of being watched the entire time. You've got... So it's got all these. So there's the lucid dream, the prophetic, and the recurring dream. And what's interesting about it, the way that incorporated is it actually affects you while you're doing this module, right? It gives the different effects. Some are like one-time onlys and things like that, but later on in the module, it continues to tie those in. So it makes the dreams that you've had important while you're in this dreamscape, right? So it just helps. I think it really helped establish the tone, and it gave something, when I ran this as a one-shot, it gave something for all the players to latch on to about their character, right? Because they had that dream. And then they have this special thing that's affecting them while they're doing it. Mm-hmm. So one of the examples of that is when they're facing a certain creature in this dreamscape, the nightmares can affect the dreamers based on what their dream was. So for the disfigurement, the nightmares can have the effect that your arms go numb and you drop any weapons you're holding. So when you face this creature, it immediately affects them based on the dreams that they had. For the person that had the falling dream, you may only communicate with bird-like squawks while you're in the presence of this nightmare. So it just it helps make the dream feel more dreamlike, I think, by adding these different effects to it. So I just thought it was an interesting way of putting it all together. And the module is interesting in itself because you eventually like wake up, but there's puzzles and stuff, but you're in this like dreamlike world where there's NPCs that react, but they keep reacting in the same way, right? So it's almost like, when you're trying to ask a question, but nothing's happening in a dream, right? And so, there's different things. So I just like how, that just helps set the tone and make it feel like a dream. So having different things that the players can roll on and lean on to help make it feel more dreamlike.
Mm-hmm. Definitely neat having those elements being tied to a positive and the negative of the dreams of the last dream, because this apparently can slot into really anything. You just tweak a few things and you can slot it into anything you want to, any regular game.
Yeah, all the modules are like that. Whereas they have them more as Don setting in the background for it, you can easily adapt them.
Cool.
Nice. Love having mechanics that help further the flavor rather than just being rules.
Well, and there's another mechanic where when you first meet somebody, you get immediate impressions, and depending on what you roll for your perception or something like that, you have different things to give the players, if I'm remembering that correctly. So let's see. Yeah. But anyway, so, just adding, because there's always different ways that people experience dreams. Some people have more lucid dreams, some people have less. And so, leaning in on those is just kind of cool.
All right. Cool beans.
Oh, yeah. So what it is pass a note to the player who had the disfigurement dream or a player at random. It says, strike him down before it's too late. So they hear a voice depending on what dream they had. With each NPC, there's a different person with a different dream that gets a different voice in their head telling them things.
Oh, like a subconscious working with something they sense about that person. Okay. Cool beans. There you go. And what is the title again for them wanting to check this out?
It's called The Endless Dream.
All right. Pretty cool. All right, Skrat, what you got?
Well, let's see if I can piece this together here. So it was a one-shot, but it used stuff from the campaign that was going on at the time. So I butcher 5e lore to no extent, so bear with me here.
So don't butcher it then.
So there was this Warforged in the campaign. His name is Cruz Roostro. And he was one of the super early models. He might have even been the first that could think for himself in that universe. After the war was over and all that stuff, he went on to go fight the great evils of the world, right? He was just programmed to do that kind of thing. That was in his robotic DNA, whatever you want to call it. That's what he was built to do. So long story short, basically came up with this Van Helsing kind of group. So they went off killing vampires, mind flayers, all that kind of big bad stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But he was super methodical, meticulous, kind of a jerk because he was business first. So anyway, somebody couldn't make it for a game one week, and I was like, all right, we'll just do a one shot. Bring your characters you're using, and we'll just do that. So I made a map, and I made it all black and white, and they thought that was just a design choice at first when they got in there. I was like, nope, everything you see has no color in here. It's just various shades of gray, and the reason for that was Mr. Cruz Roostro saw everything in black and white. Not literal black and white, but he was that personality type. He's like, all right, either you are or you aren't. You're right or you're wrong. You're left or you're right. So they were in Cruz's head. They didn't know it. So all the traps in there were very methodical, overly complicated, because that's how he was. Not complicated in the sense that the players couldn't figure it out. It's just like, wow, there was a lot of work somebody had to put into this dungeon we're in. So this Cruz Roostro guy, he had made his own mechanical contraptions in the campaign, like his own robotic companions and stuff. And in the one shot, all the bad guys they were fighting were like zombified robotic contraptions. They were all moving real slow. They had been corrupted. So that was like his worst fear, was he had lost that fight. And his soldiers, because he had real soldiers too, living soldiers. So he lost the fight. They all got corrupted. And through the whole one shot, they did not know that was the thing. They thought they just brought their characters because that was easier to do instead of making more. And then at the very, very end, they go to the boss room and there's crews, and you could see the lights just pink up over their heads. They realized what was happening. They're like, oh my gosh, we were in his head the whole time. So I thought it was pretty fun, pretty cool.
Oh,
that's about the only dream thing I've ever done. So I've given the players dreams before, but like they were actually in his head in that one.
And here Skrat was downplaying his ability to do the surreal.
Yeah.
Well.
That's so great. Oh, that moment when the lights click on and you're like, yes, they got it. We were talking about that in Surreal a little bit.
They were just like, because they had made the joke several times in the campaign. They're like, this world doesn't exist. It's all in Cruz's top hat, because he had a big top hat. He's like, we're all in his top hat. Because they would warp to his hideout and then warp out, and they're like, we've never actually walked there. We don't know if it exists. We're all just in his top hats.
And then one time they were. Well, at least then they could know that they weren't in his top hat somewhere else.
Oh, it was fun.
I mean, that's a great example, too, of the use of Dreamscapes in a game, too, it's a great thing to go to if you need it, and it doesn't necessarily have to affect anything in your campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Take a break, or it can let you experiment with something, too, if you want to try a different feel and see how the players react to it. This won't affect the campaign we're in now, but let's experiment. Do we want to do something crazy, like all our characters, but it's a Western, or all our characters and it's modern day or something? That's just a practical thought I had on it.
Well, I don't want to spoil anything for the Endless Dream, but it's the concept too where the dream can have an effect or possibly give you clues or answers to something that's going on in the campaign in the real world.
Nice.
So maybe the group's been struggling with something, and then suddenly they, for whatever reason, have a shared dream. Or there's even in certain systems, there's things that allow you to share dreams, right? Experience a dream with somebody else, and then by going through your subconscious, right, you can maybe discover things that your conscious mind isn't able to think of on its own, and so you can try to maybe represent that. That can get complicated, but if you construct the one shot or veer it some way, it might give some clues. Like maybe there's a symbol that's recurring throughout the dream, and then later on you see that symbol on the lapel or something of one of the characters.
That's actually a great way to work prophetic characters with prescience.
Yeah.
Working in the idea that they're seeing into the future, but it's not necessarily, it's not clear, because that's how prophecy kind of is anyway. It's not, just because you have a prophetic dream doesn't mean you get to interpret it, type of thing. You see that, if you look in the Bible, Pharaoh had dreams, but he couldn't interpret them. He didn't understand what they meant, but someone else could. And so you have these kind of interesting things that can happen in that sense. And again, I do encourage you to do what my last thought was last time. Use your own dreams and things that you've dreamt as points to anchor your own brain's ability to then portray that to somebody else and reflavor it and reuse it.
That's a really interesting thought that just triggered in my mind about all that with what you're saying is, with somebody else needing to interpret it. So I know a lot of GMs, especially when they first start, have a lot of trouble with stuff like prescience, with stuff like, seeing the future. They're like, oh, it's too powerful. I don't know. It's a free answer and stuff like that. The way that you could do it is you could try and provide it in vague terms, but in the world, there are dream tellers, right? So you can go to them. So people who have the prophecy, they might not be able to fully interpret them, but they go to a dream teller and they tell it to the person, and then that person is able to interpret it for them in a more meaningful way. But it costs money, it costs resources. There's maybe a limited number of them, so you might get this thing, and you might be able to figure it out on your own. But if you want to know it for sure, you got to go to these rarer people to go to them.
So has anybody played the game Remnant?
Remnant?
Things like Remnant Rise from the Ashes or something like that?
Sounds really familiar.
I believe I heard of it, but have not played it.
So the story was amazing. The game itself, not so much. But it's the end of the world kind of situation. Humans are barely scraping by. This entity from space decided to wipe them all out. It's basically just trees. But they found out these people were dreaming, and they called them dreamers because that's creative. But the dreamers, they were having these dreams that were consistent, and what they found out, they were actually, when they dreamed, controlling an entity in another world. So they were like hopping across, and then one thing led to another, and they learned how to use those dreamers to actually go to those worlds. And that's how they accidentally invited the bad guys in that wiped them out. So that was a very interesting story. Neat way to use dreams. But yeah, it just didn't play out very well. And I could have brought that game up in like every category tonight and was struggling to figure out which one it fit into. Because like you start going to other worlds. That was the weird, right? It's like,
well, and a lot of these all cross over with each other to a certain extent pretty easily.
Yeah. That game started off so strong, and then it was just so short and didn't end well at all. So disappointing.
So kind of like a dream.
Yeah, it does just end. It's like, wow, that was disappointing.
Well, and Moustache does bring it up. Dreamscapes and Mind Palaces, they are different, but the idea of the wacky and the weird and the surreal, they do all mix there. You can have, like, dreams are really easy to have them be wacky and strange, and they're great for one-shots and stuff like that. And I believe this kind of came up for me on the distinction between them, is a dreamscape is a temporary thing. A dreamscape is a place that you go to that is in a dream. This is the scape of the dream. And once the dream is done, that dream's done. It might recur in another dream, but that dream is done. But a mind palace is a mental construction that somebody uses to organize their thoughts. So going into, what was the Warforged name?
Cruz Roostro. I was just about to paste a picture in here of him.
Cruz, that was a mind palace, and they were dreaming to go into his mind palace. But it was a mind palace because it's where his thoughts, where his self is organized. And then having a dreamscape is different because those can be much more like a collage of the different things. Whereas a mind palace works as an anchoring place for somebody.
Well, basically, you're talking about like Inception versus, other things where in a mind palace, you might be invading somebody to try and secret out some information from them.
Right. Like, who
Was it
I'm
the
pretty
latest Sherlock Holmes did a Mind Palace?
Hmm.
Visual concept of it, I think.
Right. Well, I actually have a mind palace that I keep to put, like, if I have to remember something or I want to forget something or, stuff like that, I do it certain ways in my head. I visualize doing it. If you visualize things in your head and you don't, like, have a specific place, you are making a mind palace to do that. We make mind palaces for our games and our campaigns. They exist inside of a mind palace that we're creating. And we daydream to go into that mind palace. That's what we're doing in real life. It's kind of weird to talk about a TTRPG thing we're doing in a real life, because we actually are doing that. But that's pretty neat, actually. That's pretty neat. We enter a shared mind palace to be able to daydream into it. It was pretty good. That's pretty good. But like Yu-Gi-Oh, the Millennium Puzzle, Yugi goes into the Millennium Puzzle. Well, he's going into his own and the Pharaoh's shared mind and memories. So you have that type of thing that can go on there. It's really good for like a shared body type of thing, because then you can have two or multiple personalities. You can also work it that way. Oh, what was that? I meant to get that movie. There is a movie, I've mentioned it before, about a serial killer, and there's a motel in the rain where people are stranded at, and spoilers, I'll just go ahead and
2000s?
Probably.
Identity?
That actually sounds about right. Okay, so spoilers for Identity. It's still worth watching even if you know. I think it had the guy that played Point Blank or something like that, and stuff.
John Cusack.
Yeah, it had John Cusack in it. Okay, so it's the right one. There is. It turns out that this hotel and this rainstorm actually is happening in the killer's mind, because they're trying a new experiment on him. A hypnosis type of experiment where they have his personalities all meet up in one place inside his head, and they try to ferret out the one that's causing him to do all these bad things. Because the others aren't necessarily evil. They're not the serial killer. There's one personality that's the serial killer. So he's got like a personality of this lady who works as I think she was a waitress. One was a detective. One was all these different things. And he had these different personalities in conflict in this one place in his head until, eventually they ferret out several of them, until there's two left and stuff. So there you go. And it's worth a watch. And that's a way you can handle like a multiple personality character. You could have that where those personalities knowingly switch out with each other, or there's a dominant personality, because in psychology there actually usually is a dominant personality. Another one that did this was, what was it? It was the sequel to Unbreakable with Bruce Willis.
Oh, I haven't seen
Right. There was the Split or whatever, or what was that?
Splinch, something like that.
Something like that. And then there was one that combined them all together. Because there's the guy who played the newer Professor Xavier.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it combined, like Splinter, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. He was a multiple personality, and one of the personalities was the beast that could do all the super things.
Right.
So it's kind of like that. You can do that too. You can really have an interesting time dealing with those and managing those characters in the player. The player can manage those characters in that character's head if there's a multiple personality thing going on. That's a bit more complicated. You might want to reserve that for a more experienced player, because it's difficult enough to stay in character with one character.
Or the players could be trying to help out or solve a mystery or get into this person's mind to, because maybe one of the personalities is one of the devils from the Nine Hells that made a contract or something, right? And if you can ferret them out, you can break the contract or something like that, right?
All the players play the same character. They just get to be a different personality.
Oh, they all play the most.
Rule system based on that.
I have no idea.
I mean, there's some rules for like car races where everybody does something.
They all play the same character, and it's the most powerful character in the world. And the reason they all get initiatives is because he's just that powerful.
That's funny.
He calls himself the Many.
Play John. Yeah, everyone is John. Everyone is John. It sounded really interesting. I haven't tried it.
Is that based off the movie, like Everyone's John Malkovich or something, or
maybe it's a super simple RPG.
Oh, okay.
I'll paste the link for you guys. But
there are some movies where they've made like the one-page RPGs based off of it.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's what I like.
That could be fun if you've done that. Let us know how it went.
I like some of these. I do like the a tip to do that I think might be neat is I don't know how doable it is in every setting, but the idea of dream magic, where it's like illusory magic, but it's more happens in their head, and it can literally explode their head type of thing. Like you can overwhelm the mind or something like that. And the idea with a dream mage or something like that is, at least this is just my idea. You have a mage that is focused and centered. This character is focused and centered around what happens in the mind. And so for them to level up, for them to train, they don't go to anybody else. They don't go outside themselves. They retreat inside themselves each night to lucid dream and practice, and they meet other lucid dreamers in an astral type of mental palace inside their head. So like their tutor, their teacher, who may have discovered their proclivity to lucid dream walked into their dream to train them, to educate them in the dream magic type of thing. Or perhaps an entity of some kind did that, like a deity or something. That's an interesting, that's just a character idea to throw out to go along with these dreamscapes. But a lot of the things we've been mentioning so far, like what dreams may come, and Inception, The Cell, stuff like that, those really feed into dreamscapes dreamscapes and mind palaces pretty heavy.
So as an alternative, something that's maybe a little bit simpler, there's like some random generators for prophetic dreams and stuff like that you can, if you're just wanting to do just a little bit without going too crazy. So like some examples, you see two castles rise in the distance. One crumbles, then another, you turn to dust. Right? So you could use that as inspiration for something in the world going on. And you can just use these random generators of dreams to, maybe get into this. Again, that whole concept of, not doing it too much. But especially if there's a player who maybe wants a character with that concept, and you're struggling with yourself, there's so many resources online that you can just find by doing simple searches. And so you can find these D100s, D66s, whatevers to roll and, get inspired from it.
And I like, too, bouncing off that, too, is you could throw that. I think, especially if you know your table well and your players, you could throw something like that out and you don't even know exactly what it means. You kind of let them take it and play with it and see if they'll start to put story and meaning to it.
I love as a GM just throwing stuff out there and then the players saying what they think it means and going, oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, totally.
Totally what that means.
Yeah.
It's so good, though. And we always joke about that. I think we've joked about it so many times, but it really is a cool thing too, because there can be satisfaction for the player when you incorporate that in, and it's satisfying as if they guessed it. It's like guessing the end of a movie or something like that. Like, oh, I was following it. I know as a player, I've been like, oh, that's so satisfying. It's like, I thought it was there, and it's now I've seen how I got from that point to the end point.
Conversely, as a player, when other players have started to do that, I'm like, shh, be quiet. Don't give him ideas.
Shut up. Shut up. It's a warehouse. You mean it's a house that comes alive? Yes.
That's funny.
There you go. I do think, and one of the things that's distinctive between Dreamscapes and Mind Palaces is Mind Palaces are very personal. Dreamscapes can be influenced by the dreamers, plural, if you want to do that. So it really works well in very narrative-based games and stuff to have these dreamscapes emerge from the players just being introduced into the environment. So,
right, you could have a dreamscape.
Can't believe we haven't done this one yet. The Never-Ending Story.
Oh, yes.
Because that entire book, I listened to the audiobook. The audiobook is actually really pretty good. But the idea is that you have this boy who finds this book, and it's all the book's the never-ending story. It is the story that's you're telling in your own mind without knowing it, type of thing, And so the childlike empress, she needs a new name. You give her a new name, and then if you give her a new name, you're able to go to that place, to inside the never-ending story. Now in the movie, it stops right there. He gets to ride Falco and stuff. That's not what happens in the book. In the book, Sebastian, he sees Atreyu, who's kind of this reflection of who he wants himself to be, type of thing. And he does end up getting to go in there and meet Atreyu, and he gets wishes to make this place into something great and wonderful. And he gets that ability from the childlike empress, and so on and so forth. As you go through, you see Sebastian as a person change, and it changes the world around him. He changes the world around him by dreaming it up, because there, no one does anything new. They've already been made. They need humans to create and make and imagine, to do new, to make new stories, to make new ideas, to create new peoples. But it costs the human. If you're in there, if you're in the never-ending story, it costs you memories until you can lose yourself in the fantasy. And you can. You could lose yourself in the fantasy. But there are ways to get back to what is real, and thus enjoy the fantasy all over again. And so if you have these things in your game, these concepts, these dreamscapes that change with your players, that's great. You want to add some spice to it, you want to add something really interesting. What was your mom and dad's name? What was it? I never was a human. What are you talking about? I've always lived here. You forget yourself in the fantasy. And so you can make the dream both beautiful and dangerous at the same time.
Yeah, I love it. It's always good to have a cost.
Yeah, everything should have a cost. Ain't nothing free.
Are you just gonna let your dreams be dreams? Don't let your dreams be dreams. Just do it.
Do it.
Oh, Shy.
All right. We need to get into final thoughts. So, let's see. Let's do Skrat, JP, Dan, me.
No, I actually thought of some about when we first started here, so see if I can remember them. So we talked about, players having dreams and stuff, or characters having dreams. From a story perspective, I do not like dreams that tell the character where to go. I think it's kind of cheap and lazy. That's just personal taste. Now, let me be confusing. I like it when it tells the character where to go, but they can't figure it out. Now, we did talk about that, but I like it even more so when it spooks the character or it seems bad from the way they're understanding it. They think it's a bad thing coming their way, and it kind of cripples them a little mentally because they saw some images or something, and they're putting it together the wrong way. And they think it's bad, but really it's good. And in my campaign, I've given the players a couple dreams, and it's telling them like what's going on that they're trying to figure out, but due to how little they know, it's like basically it's very direct, but with how little they know, or all they know at the moment, it's very vague. So as they progress through the campaign, they can start putting it together like, oh, that's what I was trying to get the point across. Now, here's the problem I've encountered, and this is probably just the players I have. They forget the dream completely.
It's not
Just like
players.
real life.
Yeah, so they, well, when you play once a week for a couple hours or whatever, it's like, oh yeah, totally forgot that was the thing that happened. And I have to remind them. It's like, hey, you remember that dream you totally had?
Roll your learning.
Yeah.
Yep.
Roll your
But
intelligence.
I also try to do it where it doesn't matter. Like if they completely forget, it's just an extra layer of flavor. So like if they remember and go through the trouble of trying to put together like, oh, that's how this all lines up and works. Okay. But if they don't remember, there's no real punishment for it.
Yeah, you always want multiple paths.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I can't hold it against anybody for forgetting stuff. Like I will walk out of this room in a few minutes and forget 99% of what was said tonight. So
That just means he can rewatch it later and be like,
That's
oh,
right.
yeah.
New experience.
that's right. It's like, hey, I remember that happening. I was there.
Your wife's
really
like,
good,
what
though.
were you there for? It's like, I don't know.
I don't know. Let's watch and find out. Oh, but that's really all I got though. Dreams they're really cool, but I have also seen them, and that's more as a writing perspective. I've seen them used as a crutch before, as a cheap plot device. Like, hey, here's how you get from point A to point B. But in a game space, I guess I could say, I could see that having to do that. Like if you players somehow work themselves into a corner, it's like, nope, there's a divine message from the gods. Go left.
Yep.
There's a divine message from the gods. Get your butt to the chopper.
Get to the chopper. Yeah. That's all.
So-
That's great.
Yeah, so kind of going on to that thought, I like the idea of giving two different players two different dreams that contradict each other.
Yes.
That's good.
And then seeing if they play that out in their interactions.
That would be interesting.
That could be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Though, I did once dream about Roman numerals 4, 5, or 5, 4, 1, and 500. It was vivid.
Adam doesn't like it.
Well, there was a chef who was
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
there was a chef who was dreaming about making a salad. He was tossing all night.
Yeah.
All right, I already did it once. I'm not doing it again.
Yeah. The other one you had to think for a minute.
Yes. Yeah, that's my thought. Is just making, if they are in a dream, giving them interesting things that last throughout it, like the different dreams that they have, and that it has effects in the dream, and then giving players contradicting information to create possibly create tension. Sometimes you give that to a player, and then one player won't do anything with it, another player will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Knowing your players and knowing who to give it to is probably
For sure.
a good shot.
And that takes time. I'll do mine is slightly different because I had done a sum shot is what we call it. Zach calls it sum shot because it's supposed to be one, but it's never one. The sum shot in the Dreamlands, what is it? Yeah, the Dimension of Dreams, the Dreamlands and the Dimension of Dreams in the Pathfinder setting. I highly recommend checking that out. It was really fun because you have this stable core within the ethereal realm that there is actually this Dreamlands, but then on the edges is the dreams of the mortals and the Dreamscapes, and it gets nebulous. And I'd recommend checking that out.
That is very much based around the ideas that are presented in Lovecraft's Dreamlands.
Or Lovecraft, yes. Lovecraft's Dreamlands.
Yep.
It's a really fun setting. And I pulled up Lovecraft as well to kind of like flesh it out even more. And that was a great setting to play in. So, yeah, that's my shout out. Check that out in Pathfinder.
Cool beans. Well, I guess we're to me. And I guess we've come to this time where we've been browsing around our mind palaces for different ideas. It's time to shut up shop and realize that the dreamscapes that we've been messing about in are fun. My final thought for them is that those liminal spaces that you see, kind of those places that are, usually they do them with AI art or something like that, that are just off. Slides coming out of a regular wall and going down, and well, how could that work? That doesn't work. Where does that come from? The questions that come up. It's the questions that make it definable. The misunderstanding and ununderstanding of things within it. The changing of it. The idea that you can't quite pin it down. That's what makes it really tasty to bite into. The surrealness of it. Even though it can be wacky and weird, if you're doing a dreamscape or a mind palace, it's almost always going to also be surreal. So don't worry about explaining it too much. Let it flow and change because their wills and minds of the players, and by extension the characters, are affecting the very existence around them in this, much like the Maelstrom. So have some fun with it. That's my final thought. Have some fun and don't worry too much if it doesn't make sense, because it's all just a dream in the end.
Do it.
Yeah.
All right.
I love it.
Well, travelers, thank you for coming by and stopping in with us and enjoying our Augustine Allusions. We hope you had a good time and were able to get something from this. Kind of take some inspiration for your game, kind of something to pick at and use, and then check out the things that were mentioned earlier. And as always, have a great day. God bless and enjoy. Bye.
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 This content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.
Because I was thinking about having it and putting it right here for everybody to see.
You didn't want to spend $13 on
Yeah,
that, huh?
I was like, I'll just take a picture of it instead.
That looks like one of those things you would see on one of them folders from the 90s and early 2000s. Well, from the 90s, not even the early 2000s.
Yes, 100%.
Wait, what is happening?
Oh, we got our dream squirrel there.
Yeah,
for the
he's ready to go.
Dreamscapes.
He should have been the wacky one, but I didn't think of changing it in time.
Oh, well. You got a fun dreamscape. How about that? You got a wacky dreamscape.
Hey, I do have a one-shot to share for this next one coming up.
Ooh. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we
I
better
technically
get
got
into
one
it.
too.
Nice.
All right.
Story time.
Story time with JP and Squirrel.
That sounds legit. That sounds like a show.
That's a
Yeah.
Just came up with that off the top. Man, I'm on a roll tonight.
Yeah. All right, we're going to leave and start our own thing. See y'all later.
Yeah. No, you can't do that because he likes the new Indiana Jones movie. Remember? So,
Oh, that's right. That's right. You're fired already.
Well, you know what I find with movies? A lot of it has to depend on who you watch it with.
Yes.
Sure.
And so I watched it with my 75-year-old father.
okay. There you
I
go.
was relating to the aches and pains.
Oh. He's like, I relate to Indy. I wouldn't want to be doing that either.
Well, and my dad is a history buff, so there's that too.
Nice.
Yeah, the actual item has a really cool story behind it.
Yeah, it's all the other stuff. But
Yeah, we can't be here all night.
we can't be here all night. Okie dokie. Y'all about ready to start?
Yes, sir.
Let's do it.
Sure.
Okay. Room tone.